data centers are disrupting the underground flow of water and contaminating those wells. So if you're living next to a data center and that happens to you, then you're on the hook to try to drill a new well. How you're going to do that in the same aquifer and not have the same problems is beyond me. The data center growth is going to increase that, but also then, as you mentioned, the trading. As much as we're dependent upon oil at the moment, for millennia, human beings survived without using it. We can't survive without water. So imagine the full monetization of clean water.
You can help build the only independent news outlet, always on the ground with the people, for as low as 16 cents a day.
Corporate media, they've been lying to us for years, and you're going straight to the people.
Flint, Michigan.
Brooklyn, New York.
Government sending one more you to the residents of Chicago.
We need as many independent voices as possible, and that's why what you guys do is so important.
Covering what the corporate media covers up. Hey, it's Jordan. I am happy to be joined by Mitch Jones. You are the Managing Director for Policy and Litigation at Food and Water Watch, which does great work. It's kind of hard to keep up with the cascading shitstorms of America. Obviously, a lot of crises going on in the current administration. But I think as time goes, and maybe we could actually look at the damage, one of the worst things, not just 2025 has been happening for years, but really accelerated this year, is this data center boom that is spreading all over the country. Big tech is in an arms race for data centers, for AI dominance, and its effects on our already strained water resources. Can you first start? Obviously, Food and Water Watch has been observing this for a while. But just to kind of explain, I mean, I'll read a little bit from you guys. AI and its data centers, 2022 alone, Google, Microsoft, Meta used an estimated 580 billion gallons of water to power their cooling centers. And that was years ago. I mean, now we're talking ChatGPT uses over 500 kilowatts of electricity every day. That's enough electricity to power over 28 million homes. And if AI expansion follows projections, it could consume as much as 18.5 million households' water usage annually just to cool the servers. How screwed are we in a simplistic way?
Potentially very, is the simplistic answer. The projected growth of data centers being primarily driven by the growth of AI, generative AI in particular, has the ability to not only completely strain water resources in stressed water areas, but also in other areas where the data centers are moving in, increasing water costs for individual households. On top of that, we're seeing, of course, massive use of electricity. And, you know, the water consumption, we can get into this a little bit more if you want to. The water consumption of data centers and AI is split between cooling the data centers, but also powering them. 75 to 80% of the water used is actually in generating the electricity for data centers. About 20%, 25% is for actually cooling them. So these are extremely power hungry, water hungry, but also land hungry, which we often don't talk about. We're converting, you know, farmland and in some cases woodland into these industrial hundreds of acres large data centers. So with the projected growth, you know, as you indicated, we could be talking about the equivalent of 18.5 million households in just 3 more years. If we don't stop building data centers and get ourselves ahead of what's coming down the track, then, to use your terminology, we probably are screwed. And that's why Food and Water Watch has been leading the national call for a moratorium on new data centers until we can figure out if this industry can actually be regulated in a way that it's not going to harm the communities where it's being built out or society at large.
And I just want to play this video that kind of crystallizes it. It's from Bernie Sanders talking about both the electricity and the water usage of these data centers.
Across America, the AI gold rush is hitting small towns in unexpected ways. Data centers. Built by big tech companies like Oracle and Meta to service the AI boom. These massive facilities will house computer servers used to train AI models like ChatGPT.
Data center demonstrations. Dozens show up to protest at a Port Washington Common Council meeting tonight.
This is a $15 billion behemoth built in partnership with Oracle and OpenAI. All this investment in a town of about 13,000 people, 45 minutes north of Milwaukee, must be exciting, right?
It is insane how many people are distracted, can't sleep at night.
These data centers are water guzzlers, and this one is being built right next to Lake Michigan. Studies show a single data center facility uses 3 to 5 million gallons of water per day, the equivalent of an entire town. Research shows that in areas near AI data centers, electricity costs have jumped over 267%. These are passed along to communities through higher electrical bills. The companies say this data center will create thousands of jobs, but that's not what actually happens.
Members of the Port Washington community are really frustrated that they're being ignored.
I don't see anything in it for Port Washington. The jobs aren't going to be given out to Port Washington residents.
The jobs that data centers do create are mostly temporary construction jobs. Permanent jobs are usually in the dozens and not in the thousands.
Everything on 125 feet of both sides of us will be destroyed.
Even worse, the AI software these data centers support is being used by these exact same billionaires to automate jobs and drive up their already sky-high profits. The question with AI is not whether it's good or bad, but who benefits from it. Right now, it's not the workers, it's not the communities where they're being built, it's the oligarchy.
What kind of compensation possibly can you give me to destroy everything I've loved and lived for?
So on the water piece alone, something that strikes me, they're not building these data centers in Beverly Hills, right? They're building them, in large part in the backyards of deindustrialized areas, on the coasts in a lot of places too, but not in like uber wealthy areas. We've seen Elon Musk's supercomputer plant in South Memphis has been releasing all sorts of toxins and pollution, literally poisoning the community. And they're also building these data centers in already water vulnerable communities where the water infrastructure is 75 to 100 years old. You already have, lead, heavy metal contamination, and then you're going to add on hoarding the water. It seems like you could have a mixed bowl in terms of possibly a shortage, possible contamination. Can you talk about all the threats, particularly to the water?
Yeah, the threats to the water are the ones that you've mentioned. We see reports of data centers coming in places like New York, where nearby houses that are, because these data centers are going into more rural areas, they're drawing water, groundwater, and competing with local wells for private homes. And there are reports where people are reporting that they've noticed the flow of water into their homes beginning to reduce and become a trickle and then stop or turn brown. And that is because the data centers are disrupting the underground flow of water and contaminating those wells. So if you're living next to a data center and that happens to you, then you're on the hook to try to drill a new well. How you're going to do that in the same aquifer and not have the same problems is beyond me. But we've seen that problem. We also see, the huge thirst in other areas as well. There is a lot of expansion of data centers in the Southwest, which is already severely water strained. It's been suffering from a drought. The Colorado River is dwindling. We all know this. There's a huge fight in the Southwest right now about how the water from the Colorado River is going to be distributed. Already in the Southwest, of course, it's being strapped because there are huge cities taking water. But beyond that, and much more troubling, is, of course, the oil and gas industry is taking huge amounts of water to frack for oil and gas in the Southwest. Big ag is using large amounts of water to grow alfalfa in our deserts in order to send it to other desert countries to feed their cattle. And now you're adding data centers taking, hundreds of thousands, millions of gallons of water in water distressed areas. This is going to harm, local industries, the smaller farmers who aren't, working to just send alfalfa abroad, but are growing, let's say Hatch Valley, New Mexico, where they're growing Hatch green chilies, which I love, is becoming water distressed as well. Part of that's climate change, which frankly data centers are also driving, which will also increase the stress to water. So what we're seeing is whether you're in an already water stressed area, someplace like New Mexico or Arizona, or if you're in someplace which isn't considered water stressed, like upstate New York, you're going to have impacts on your ability to access the clean water that you need. And then for those of us in more municipal areas, because data centers are, of course, being built in the suburbs. One of the largest collections of them anywhere is in suburban Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. That's going to put a strain on municipal systems as well. And locals are going to probably also see increases in their water rates as well as their electricity rates. So the water footprint of data centers is huge and problematic no matter where you are, whether you're in an already water stressed area or not. This is going to have an effect on your ability to have clean, safe, and affordable drinking water.
Most people don't realize that water began being traded about 5 years ago on the stock market as a commodity, which is a scary thing if you ask me. No different than gold, oil. But, you know, my thought was, well, these hedge funders who are buying up water stocks must know something or be predicting something that maybe down the road there might be scarcity of clean water. Are obviously, even separate from AI, there's concerns about that. But with AI, I mean, guzzling, you're talking potentially tens of millions of water, gallons of water a year, not to mention the contamination threats. Could this worsen the threat of a clean water shortage in America?
Oh, definitely. I think, you know, we were already on the cusp of a major clean water crisis because of fracking, because of industrial agriculture, because of climate change and changes in weather patterns due to that. And the data center growth is going to increase that. But also then, as you mentioned, the trading. It has been a decades-long dream of bankers on Wall Street to create a water market that's the equivalent of the oil market. But if you consider, you know, as much as we're dependent upon oil at the moment, for millennia, human beings survived without using it. We can't survive without water. So imagine the full monetization of clean water trading in bulk. You know, I've read reports where they dream of having water tankers, just like oil tankers, shipping fresh water around the world. It's just a preposterous notion that's driven by one thing and one thing only, and that's the greed for more profit. Whether you're on Wall Street or in Silicon Valley, what is driving this is the greed for more profit, the greed for more money, and behind that, the greed for more power. That's what's happening at the moment. And it's threatening our water supplies, which were already stressed, which were already strained. It's threatening to increase climate change because most of these data centers are being powered by fossil fuels, which will then also reverberate in stressing water even more. It becomes a bit of a spiral and a loop where the water continues to be stressed. And then if you toss in Wall Street speculation on top of that, it becomes, you know, a really unbearable dystopian future. And that is what we are fighting against. And that is what people across this country and communities, large and small, are fighting against. And that's why we're calling for a national halt to new data centers until we can figure out if this industry, one, is valuable at all, and then two, if it can actually be regulated in such a way that it benefits the communities where it's going to and benefits society at large, as opposed to just enriching people like Elon Musk.
And you mentioned the fossil fuel part of this to point out, I mean, AI consumed as much water as the water bottle industry this year. It also created as much carbon pollution as New York City.
Yeah.
And that's a lot if you live in New York City. You know, obviously there's debate about this, but what is the overall net positive of these data centers? You know, some people argue AI, medical innovation, and, you know, research and yada, yada, yada. I would argue there's a lot more horrible stuff going on. But in this race to build this with, by the way, virtually no regulation,
Right.
The Trump administration literally is trying to block states from being able to regulate this. You also have, the aforementioned Musk supercomputer plant in South Memphis. I don't believe even had permits, which there was a lot of kind of pay for play going on there.
Yeah.
But what are you guys seeing like a real net benefit to society from AI that would warrant all of this devastation we're talking about?
No, what we're seeing is the creation of cat memes and deep fake videos. That's what AI really is being used for these days. Look, I spend time scrolling through Instagram just like most people do. And, I see the memes as well. That I read a statistic that says that just generating one AI meme uses the equivalent of 1 to 3 bottles of water. You consider the thousands of those that are created across the world every day. Deep fake videos, which are harming individuals, which are harming our culture, harming our politics. That's what this industry is being used for right now. And while they are promising some sort of major breakthroughs in the future, industry always promises major breakthroughs in the future, and often, if not frequently, or for the most part, fail to deliver. The only thing that this industry is delivering right now is a huge increase in the wealth of the oligarchs who control the tech industry. There was a report over the weekend that the top 10 tech moguls in the US increased their wealth this past year by $550 billion. And almost all of that is due to this booming investment in AI and data centers. But for the rest of us, the benefits aren't there. They aren't in any sense material. And if anything, they just serve to harm us through the fact that it is allowing, nefarious, evil people in politics to create deep fake videos. I read a very disturbing report a couple of weeks ago that shows that chatbots are more persuasive in getting somebody to change a political opinion than a conversation with a human being, which is, shocking, startling, and frightening. So the benefits, if any, materialize are, promised and at the moment imaginary, whereas the threats and the harms to our society are real. And then, of course, the material, harms that come from having the data centers built in your community, whether it's a drain on your water resources, whether it's a use of land, whether it's the increase in electricity prices, which across the country went up 13% in 2025. Most of that being driven by data centers and AI. And then there's noise pollution, which people, who don't live near these things don't understand. So it's really a harmful industry at the community level. It's a harmful industry at the societal level, and the benefits are imagined, promised, and illusory at the moment.
Should also add in those chatbots are accidentally urging vulnerable teenagers to commit suicide, which is causing lawsuits and obviously devastation.
It's unconscionable what the chatbots are doing right now to young people.
I want to add also, we've seen obviously Aaron Brockovich, and since then, so much evidence that water contamination can lead to cancers, reproductive issues in women, cognitive issues. But we're already starting to see, there's been increased cancer near some of these data centers. This was a big piece Rolling Stone did on an Amazon data center that's actually been in place since 2011 in Oregon. They focused on a cattle rancher, Jim Doherty. His story began when he noticed a rise in bizarre medical conditions among the county's 45,000 residents linked to toxins in the local water. Working with the county health office, the rancher turned public official began a survey of 70 wells throughout his jurisdiction. 68 violated federal limits for nitrates in drinking water. And of the first 30 homes he visited, 25 residents had recently had miscarriages. 6 had lost a kidney. Quote, One man, about 60 years old, also had his voice box taken out because of a cancer that only smokers get, but he hadn't smoked a day in his life. But the spike in cancer-causing pollution wasn't the fault of local farms, as Doherty expected. It had roots in a 10,000 square foot data center by Amazon, which went online in Morrow County in 2011. Basically, the allegation went like this. Industrial megafarms operating in the area are responsible for churning out millions of gallons of wastewater laden with nitrates from fertilizer. All that waste had to go somewhere, which is one way of saying it mostly ends up in the ground. But Amazon's data center, thirsty for water, supercharged the process, adding millions of gallons of wastewater a year to that heavy volume of farm runoff. I mean, so we already pre-AI data center, you had PFAS, nitrates, lead, bacteria, all sorts of contaminants in your water. And unfortunately, most of the groups that study this, I think, minimize it. But now you're adding this on top of it. So has Food and Water Watch looked into that as well?
We're looking into all of the harms. We're in touch with folks on the ground in these communities across the country that are fighting data centers. Actually, just had good news this morning. We learned that last week, I think it's Dryden township of Dryden in upstate New York beat back a data center proposal, and their local officials actually asked to come back with a ban on data centers as opposed to moving forward with them. So, we're talking to folks on the ground and hearing about the firsthand implications of the growth of these data centers. Now, the sort of health problems that we're seeing in Oregon, that's a 14-year-old data center, and it does take time for those sorts of health effects, obviously, to begin to accumulate. But anytime you move a dirty industrial process into an area, it's going to lead to both air and water contamination increases, and that's going to lead to increases in harms to public health, cancers, miscarriages, as you've mentioned. We saw this with the fracking, increase in fracking. We saw, low birth weights, miscarriages, cancer clusters near fracking wells. The same thing is true with data centers. These industrial projects coming into rural and suburban areas do have real health harms on top of all of the other things that we'd already discussed. And, we are working with people on the ground in these communities to try to educate others about all of these harms as this backlash against data centers is growing, and it is growing. We had over 230 organizations across the country sign a letter to Congress that we led, calling for a national moratorium on data centers, a halt on data centers. You played the clip from Bernie. Bernie joined in that call shortly after we sent that letter. We're seeing a real backlash grow across this country because of, first of all, the water, land, and electric uses. But as people learn more and more about the additional harms, both societal from AI, but also the health harms of having these industrial facilities dropped into their communities with little or no input from the local community, to be honest, we're seeing this backlash grow, and we're seeing companies start to lose some of these fights. And frankly, they're starting to get scared, and they're pouring now billions of dollars a year into a counter push to try to promote the industry. Lobbying Congress, as you mentioned, the Trump administration is hoping to get states to not regulate AI. They don't have the authority to do that, but they're going to try anyway. And, I should also point out, this isn't a left-right issue. This is an issue that is bringing people across the political spectrum together in these communities to oppose data centers. We're seeing Republicans be skeptical. We're seeing Democrats be supportive, frankly. So this is a cross-cutting issue, not only in terms of the various ways that it impacts people, but also it draws people from across the political spectrum together to take on these Silicon Valley techno oligarchs that are the only people who are currently benefiting from this growth in data centers.
Well, on that optimistic note, Happy New Year. Thank you. Mitch Jones, Managing Director of Policy and Litigation at Food and Water Watch. Everybody check out Food and Water Watch. They do great work, and we'll stay in touch.
All right. Thank you very much.